Let's take a look at some legacy charts. The biggest thing that's happened in the past week, obviously being the rollover from Trump to Biden in the US, and coming with it some political ramifications, or lack thereof. The most interesting metric that has really calmed down over the past week has been the VIX, which historically, if the VIX is down, crypto is bullish. If the VIX is falling, crypto is bullish. The opposite is true. If the VIX is rising, crypto is bearish. If the VIX is at highs, crypto is bearish. So it's a bit odd to see crypto having a negative 10% day with the VIX being where it is, in that it's at the bottom of a multi-month range or breakdown since March. Ideally, the VIX continues to decay to 10 or 5 or whatever the natural state of things is for the VIX, and that will fuel continued bullishness for crypto, at least it has in the past. A few more odd things that have happened. Dixie, the correlation 30-day rolling, has flipped positive, which historically, since March, hasn't really held for that long of a period of time. This has mostly been mega negative. And the gold correlation has flipped negative, which also doesn't really hold or hasn't held for an extended period of time in recent history. Correlations with SPX and NASDAQ continue to be extremely high, albeit declining. So we're definitely out on an island here as far as the expectations of what's going on in crypto versus where the correlations have been. Correlation isn't causation, obviously, but to see the correlations flipping so violently is rather interesting, isn't it? Here is the 30-week rolling correlations. Dixie still deeply negative. Gold actually still negative on the 30-week as far as that correlation. Historically, it doesn't look like it holds negative for very long. And here are the 30-week SPX and NASDAQ, mostly positive historically, mostly extremely positive correlations historically. Here's another look at VIX, which really hasn't been above 30 for most of its life, other than this past year. And you can see as the VIX was decaying throughout 2016, 2017, 2018, crypto just kept going up. So this is what I'd want to see over the next 2-3 years. Just the VIX decay to nothing, crypto on a moon mission. Here's the DXY by itself on the weekly with yearly pivots and RSI. There was actually a bullish divergence on the Dixie. It's subtle, but definitely there on the weekly. DXY is the dollar index, the US dollar index. And everybody and their mother is basically looking at the 2017 or 2018 low. As far as supports, that's around 88, 89, somewhere around there. If we get another stimulus, which almost certainly we will, then DXY should take a hit to the downside and help crypto move further north as they print more money. Everything else tends to inflate around it. Downside support for DXY based on yearly pivot around 8.5. If we break 8.8 cleanly, I mean, we're going to see stuff on BTC that's going to be rather interesting price action wise. The road to 100K is painted with Dixie below 88. Dixie goes to 80. That should be easy 6-figure BTC. Here's the daily, and just in a vacuum, TKC clamp here. I wouldn't be short on this if I was trading this in a vacuum, just because this looks like it wants to reverse. It looks like a tiny inverted head and shoulders here on the daily. But worst case for BTC would be a strong dollar or a strong bullish reversal. Then I think we'll see some violent downside for BTC. Here's gold, just sort of moving around town on the weekly, doing a bunch of nothing. Trending bearish over the past few months, really. I mean, most of late 2020 was bearish for gold. I do like this edge-to-edge move for gold. If it can break this yearly pivot, I do like 16 or 16.5 or whatever this is, as far as the downside is concerned. And I would say that would be bearish for Bitcoin or crypto, but the correlation appears to be negative-ish right now, or no correlation whatsoever, so it's hard to get a read on that. But gold looks like it may be in for a bit more downside. Something else with gold and the correlations, if people are rotating out of gold into crypto, then you're probably going to see a embellished negative correlation with that effect. Gold on the daily, it's hit the 200 a couple times and bounced. It's been in and out of the cloud a few times. You're getting your daily or your TK recrosses above the cloud, and that's what I'd be waiting for here. If I was going long on gold, I'd want it above 1950. Silver has done much better than gold over the past few months, and it has a yearly pivot somewhere around 33 to the upside. This does look like classic Y coffee and accumulation down here with markup phase currently in action. So I like silver's upside more than gold at the moment. Looks much stronger. The daily cloud looks much stronger as well. Kind of looks like ETH a little bit, in a sense that it's a giant mess, but still on trend. Bullish TK cross, price above cloud. If cloud flips bullish, that would be a definite long entry signal. Anything above 26 or anything above 27.5 would be a long entry signal. So all this looks much more bullish than gold. Here's the S&P on the daily, and the first thing I noticed was this insane TK C-clamp. Not a C-clamp, but TK disequilibrium. And the other thing being the yearly pivot resistance isn't until like 43, 44. So this could have quite a wild run to the next high, even though it looks absolutely insane right now. Something else to keep in mind, for whatever reason, stocks tend to do better during Democratic administrations than Republican administrations, at least dating back to Bush. So if that's any indication for crypto, then we should be in for a wild ride to the upside as well. And just because I was curious on this TK disequilibrium, it's the largest TK disequilibrium on the weekly since 2010. This down here is an indicator that measures that. So it kind of shows you how quickly we've reversed since March, really. And in general, I'd say that's a danger zone in a vacuum, but if we keep printing money, then what does it all even matter, really? Everything's just going to keep going up. Here's NASDAQ on the weekly. Also looks absolutely insane. In a vacuum, massive TK disequilibrium there. This is the biggest on the NASDAQ since 2010 as well. And you can see what normally happens is the market recognizes that it's overbought and it either goes sideways or declines. Doesn't necessarily continue most of the time. So the probability, the expectation is not continuation here in a vacuum. But we aren't in a vacuum. We're living in a stimulus-juiced world. So I think the big takeaways are the stock correlations continue. DXY negative correlation on low time frames went to 0. Typically hasn't held 0 over the past year for any great length of time. And the VIX should continue to decline so long as we keep vaccinating and coronavirus numbers may or may not come down. Some sanity coming back to the world. Hopefully some stuff reopens and we try to return to some sort of normalcy. All that should have a great effect on the VIX in a negative fashion, which should bring crypto prices higher. Any stimulus that's coming should be incredibly bullish for BTC and crypto.